supposed to be, or if you feel that maybe there's parts of you that don't exactly know how to put that fascinating jigsaw together, then you are absolutely in the right place. I'm Stuart Hayes, and welcome to Two Guys Talk Heart, the show that unpacks the experience, the techniques, and even the science around the heart, and how the heart can help us in everyday life to live happier, have better well-being, and all those awesome things. In any case, please allow me to introduce today's guest on the show, and it is, of course, Amanda Young, intrepid adventurer who has just come back from trekking all the way up to Darwin with her boys. In fact, Amanda, I'm going to get you to talk a little bit about that adventure yourself. The topic of today is about fear, and how does fear show up in our life, and in fact, how does our heart help us in ways that we may not even realise that we have access to deal with fear. Amanda, how are you? Welcome to Melbourne.
Oh, thanks, Stu. It's lovely to be here.
So, Amanda, you embarked on a journey which, for many people, would be a very challenging journey. To sort of, Amanda comes from Tasmania. You've jumped in your vehicle, grabbed your two sons, and decided to drive. What is it? 3,500, 4,000 kilometres?
Yeah, it's about that when I was checking the map out. Slightly overwhelming when I first looked, because I had the idea, said I'd do it, and then I started to look at what I was actually going to embark on.
So clearly, fear for you has never been much of an issue in life. You know, if that's the case, you know, you can just jump in the car and do something like that.
No, fear's always it's lurked. It's always been lurking there in my life. I've always noticed it's
Lurking.
there, lurking in the background. But what I tend to do is, I'll make a decision, go, yeah, that's a great decision, and then I'll start on that decision, and then, or that adventure or that plan, and then I'll notice the fears coming in. But because I've already decided I'm going to do it, then I've just had to put up with coping around fear and making the most of it and doing it anyway. That tends to have been my style so far.
You know, it's fascinating. So, you know, getting ready for this episode, and even my question was a little bit facetious, because you did share off camera that, you know, I guess that at times in your life, fear has been a much more significant foe or illusion, perhaps. If you think about, you know, Lao Tzu shares that there is no illusion greater than fear. Yeah? So, and the whole concept of fear being, you know, or as many people would say, it's an acronym that means false evidence appearing real, you know, but it's that apparent imminent threat that seems to be always there for people who are frozen by fear, right? And you shared that earlier in your life that was a significantly greater dynamic for you than maybe it is these days. So, and these days, you know, your heart, and we'll get to that in your beautiful story that we'll talk about, has been a great help for you. But why don't you go back a little bit and talk about that dynamic of fear, perhaps at an earlier stage in life, and maybe how that was for you, and as an example.
Yeah, so in the past when I've come across fear, it's always been a freezing energy where I haven't been able to move, which has always felt that it's made the situation much more dangerous. And I've been, in a way, I've been fearful of fear because of that aspect of fear itself, and tried to avoid fear. Because if it comes up and it's frozen me, then I can't act and get myself out of trouble.
Sure.
And so it was interesting having sort of led, you know, a quieter existence for quite a while with my family in a family home, and then suddenly finding myself driving through the centre of Australia with just my two boys. So I was fully responsible for I felt fully responsible for their safety.
I mean, just for some context for the people watching the show, so Amanda decided to embark on this adventure, and you know, came to Melbourne, where she was greeted by a car that she had purchased and had fitted with a tent. And Rani and I and Hugo decided to head off for the first couple of days of your massive adventure with you and the boys to get to sort of, I guess, help you to the city gates of Melbourne.
Oh, and I needed that help so much.
Practice using the camping equipment and all that sort of stuff, and then you just sort of drove off into the sunset, to cross a desert and mountains and places that, let's be honest, maybe we take for granted a little bit living in cities and in a well-developed country these days, but a place that people tried to cross for decades unsuccessfully, and that led to the demise of famous adventurers for a very long time that they've erected statues about these days because they didn't make it. Off you went. Clearly not frozen by fear. Now maybe there was a particular adventure that happened for you during your journey that we'll talk about shortly, but why could you even go on a journey like that today, whereas if you crank the clock back 15 or 20 years, that would have been nonsense to even considered? What really has changed for you?
It's really my journey where I've been in contact with the heart. So I've got a source of, I don't know, the heart's given me a source of trust, of reliability, of sense of safety beyond my environment. And so I can come back to that and if it...
So why wouldn't you have done it maybe 20 years ago?
Well, 20 years ago, I would have to know, I'd have to know everything was okay. Yeah. So I'd have to know my car thoroughly. I'd want everything double checked if I was going to go on an adventure like that. And I feel like the amount of organising I would have had to have done and the amount of money I would have needed to back that type of trip, I actually didn't have that for this trip. I went without... we didn't have a lot of funds, money funds, and we actually had an old car that a friend of ours had checked over, and it felt good, with just feeling with my heart, it felt good. I love the idea of a rooftop tent, so that if there was snakes and things, they can't get us. So I had a few nice safety things that worked for me.
So you didn't really want to sleep on the ground?
Well, when I first started out, because I was aware we were going out to Darwin and there were going to be crocs and things like that, so I was really happy that we would be able to sleep above the car.
And one of the things that just Amanda, this is actually in many respects quite comically funny, really, that you shared with us before you left was, in fact, that you were fearful that something might happen, or not that fearful, but there was this risk, and that if you're in the desert, and you sensed there was going to be some type of adventure that might arise, and sure enough, it did.
Yeah, these trips they do that. Like life has a way of, I don't know, it feels like it tests you sometimes, and.
So why don't you share? Let's bring this. I feel like there's this blue elephant in the room, which is actually this story. Maybe just bring in what you need to about the story to illustrate it for the people watching. And
well, we were up at Catherine Gorge, and we'd arrived the day before. And we decided, the boys and I, that we would do a walk in the gorge. I was really keen.
And just for context, for people watching who are not from Australia, so Catherine Gorge is a beautiful, stunning gorge with a river that flows through it that's about, half an hour out of a town called Catherine. Now, Catherine is how many hours from Darwin?
Oh, 3.5.
So it's 3.5 hours from the nearest town of more than 50,000 people, or less, let's say.
Yeah.
And this is a climate time of the year where the temperature is generally
hot and hotter.
mid 30 degrees Celsius. Very, very humid. So increasing humidity, probably 90% plus humidity. Super hot conditions. It's a very arid. This is the middle of the desert, and this gorge is the only river during the dry season that really runs in the whole, for hundreds and hundreds of kilometres of desert, basically.
Yeah. Thanks,
Keep
Stu,
going.
painting that picture. That's great.
And our intrepid explorers have gone there and continue with your story.
Yeah, so I felt like good to get the boys out doing some exercise. They've been in the car for quite a long time, so we'd do this walk. I was aware that they were a fair bit fitter than myself, but still, I'm in good condition. And so we packed our bags. People told us take lots of water, enough lunch. It was only a 4.5 hour walk, and we were going to do lovely swims in these gorges. And you need to get to a higher gorge than Catherine River itself because there's crocodiles in the bottom gorge. So you have to walk a little bit higher. So we were keen to walk higher because we did not.
So this place is so harsh that not even the crocs would go there.
Yeah, we did not want to come face to face with crocs. So,
No.
so we started later than we wanted to because getting teenagers and getting us all ready is always takes a couple of hours extra in the morning. And anyway, off we set with our bags and everything. My oldest son carrying the backpack, and a beautiful day, and we were all very happy about it. And we were slowly, the first part's more touristy, and the path's, beautifully done, and there's nice water taps and things along. And then as we were going further and further out, there was less of that, and the road was more rugged. And yeah, to cut a long story short, we found ourselves at a point where we had lost sight of the track. Our water was running out. I had realised that I was suffering from heat exhaustion. All my fingers were swelling up, and I was starting to feel quite sick. And to move on past that stage, it ended with my two boys taking off with the bag and headed down one direction to head out of the park, where I'd suggested that I would stay and rest under a shade and find a path, because we were off the path at this point, so
at
we
this
needed
stage,
to find it.
so the two boys had headed off to try to get some help, really, and find their way out.
Yeah.
And you had how much water left?
I didn't at the time have water left because it felt
So they're in the middle of
to leave that with the
desert.
boys.
You're lost. You are sitting on a rock. You found a beautiful rock by all accounts. So talk us through your feeling, your experience of within yourself.
Yeah, at the time I had a very strong feeling, even though physically I didn't seem to be doing too well. I felt okay. I felt it was all okay. And I was keen for the boys to do what they felt they needed to do. One of my sons is already turning into an adult, and so that felt fine. And it was really more that they would be okay, because I had such a strong sense that I was going to be okay, even though all I knew was that I just didn't want to move into the sun. It was really clear. And through the heart, I feel like I'm much more connected with my physical than I used to be.
Sure.
So, where in the past I might have pushed over that and gone, you've just got to walk, you've just got to do it because you've got your two kids and you've got to get out there with them and it's all got to be safe. I could just feel a lot of pressure.
So,
in this area.
I guess, this is quite fascinating. So, many people watching may say, well, the reason you weren't afraid at this point was because you were delusional. You were just...
Oh, no, I was not delusional at all.
No. So,
no.
You were quite lucid.
Really clear. Really, really clear. So, I hadn't got delusional. And what I did find that when the boys had gone and I'd rested a little bit, I actually felt very clearly to go up behind me, up the rocks behind me, and that was one of the discussions I'd had with my boys. One wanted to go we wanted to go opposite ways, and we both felt strongly about it. So I went the way behind me, and I did find the arrows for the path. So I knew I was on the path, and that was a great relief. And I, cooed down to the boys, and they did hear and coo back, and we both sounded very positive. Like, my information in my voice was positive to them, and theirs was back. So I stayed there for a while, wondering if they were going to come back, but they'd headed out. So when I next called out, they had gone, and I knew they'd gone on their way, and they were happy
And
with
this
that.
is about 2 p.m.
This is
Yeah.
about 2 p.m. And so because my physical condition wasn't good, I would only walk a little bit, and then I'd have to rest in the shade again, because I'd start to feel very sick, and other symptoms that concerned me physically, but actually emotionally I was fine. And whether that was because it was hot and I was tired, but I actually never felt worried.
And so the story continues from here, though, doesn't it? So, ultimately, the boys walked, and they found their way out of the park.
Yeah.
And it was sort of 3 or 4 hours later, they emerged, got in contact with some other people, and then could raise the alert that Mum was sort of stuck, or somewhere else in the park, not well, no water, and you, of course, didn't know this. So, they then embarked, or the police got involved with the rangers, or to sort of start looking for Amanda in the park, right? So, and then off they go, right? But meanwhile, what were you sort of thinking was gonna? I mean, the sun goes down; it's dark.
Well, I walked till the sun went. I just, in a way, it was like I just stayed with the moment. I walked till it was dark, and then I went, no, I won't be able to see the arrows. I'll stop here. And interestingly enough, or how it is, and I find that so often when I follow my heart, the place where I stopped, it was beautiful. It was just up from a dry riverbed, and there was some massive, flat, round rocks. And so I just set myself up in the middle of a round rock, and thought, well, I'll rest up, and very early in the morning, I'll awake and walk out before the sun gets hot. I'll just follow the path, and I wasn't sure how many hours away I was, but I knew that I was on a track with arrows, so I knew that would lead me somewhere.
Were you feeling thirsty?
Well, that was interesting too, because I expected to feel thirsty, and it did come through my mind, and I just thought, do you know what? People have travelled and been on this land for years and years and years. The Aboriginal people of this land would have travelled and hunted there and been thirsty and had their different things, and I just thought, it's okay, and I didn't really notice it. So
you sort of basically had surrendered to the fact that you were going to spend the night on the rock, in the desert, in the gorge, and meanwhile the search party had sort of gone out looking for you. I guess the boys had a lot of uncertainty about where Mum was and how she was and all that sort of thing. And probably harder for them in many respects, because they didn't know what was going on, right?
Yeah, much harder for them.
And as the story unravels, you sort of the search party went out, and you didn't get found until after midnight. Or sort of pretty close to midnight, I guess it was. And what it was interesting. You were talking about when you finally found, you were found, and people had water and food, and these are people that are professional. I guess they're rangers in the area, but part of their role is they've got to go find people, which happens a bit.
Yeah, it happens quite often out there, they told me.
And the interesting thing was, for me, when you talked about the story, was how they they had found that, you know, when they found you, that you were not perhaps in the same emotional state of distress that many people are when they get found.
Yeah, they were delighted. They were delighted because they had quite a few questions how I was feeling and, you know, how I felt being out there at night alone. And yeah, it was interesting because I just found that there wasn't a lot of, I didn't feel any pressure from the heart, so I had a sense of still safety and well-being, even though the circumstances could indicate otherwise. And by staying connected with the heart, I found that I had a better control over my mind. So I was able just to lie down and really look at the stars. I mean, it's incredible out there. Like the night sky as it gets darker is phenomenal. So it's a phenomenal place to be with all the sounds of the bush and the jungle and the stars, and actually stay in that moment and go, wow, this is an incredible place to be, without sort of allowing myself to wander off into fears that might have been distressing. Yeah.
Did you find though that were there times when things did happen where, you know, you talked earlier about how sometimes you could feel fear around the edges a little bit? You know?
Yeah, there was a noise, a rustling by my rock, and I was like, ooh, you just stay there. This is my rock. You know, and then so there was still a sense of...
Did you have a torch?
No.
No torch?
No,
so,
if I had a torch, I would
So
have
no
been
light?
No.
Just the stars?
Yes, and it was a dark night. It wasn't the full moon time of the month, so yeah, it was dark. It was dark there. But also because it was so dark, at one point I heard a big, like a bang, and saw lights and thought there was a thunderstorm coming.
Excellent.
And thinking, wow,
awesome.
Okay, I actually do quite like storms, so that's okay, still in my safety zone. So, but yeah, it was interesting because it's not like I'm a fearless person. Like, I actually don't even like the dark very much. I'm a bit spooked. I'm actually spooked of the dark. So what was interesting for me was I found myself in that space and knew that I couldn't allow myself to be like that, because it wouldn't work, it wouldn't be helpful.
Yeah.
And being on the edge like that, I was fine. I wasn't scared. So that was just interesting for me to... Was it at any stage an enjoyable experience? Did you sort of just say, you know what, this is actually really cool? Yeah. I had times. In what way? Just looking at the sky when I was lying on the rock, and just that sense of peace, and I don't know, through the heart, it's a feeling of actually being at one with the nature that's around you too. Sure. Yeah. And a lot of people say that when they're walking, you know, they can feel that they sort of let go and start to feel freer and lighter. And because we've been on this journey for a while, like, I did feel more connected with nature. So it's not like it's actually really interesting. I mean, last week's episode, for anyone that watched it, who's watching now, we shared a story of Dalai Lama, and so you wouldn't have seen this, Amanda, because you were out in the middle of this. Is possibly when you're out in the middle of somewhere. So Dalai Lama shared a story about how, in his perspective, negative emotions arise. So things like fear or anger or resentment or these type of things, they arise when we are, I guess, oriented in a self prioritized way. You know, so so for example, you know, if your mission in life is to make money or to do well in your job or whatever, then things that block you will provide or maybe give rise to feelings of resentment or anger or whatever, right? So for me, when I think about fear in that context, I start to think about how it's almost that survival fear. You know, it's the fear of harm
you know, myself, I might get harmed. You know, I might, you know, there could be, you know, and I keep saying the word might because the whole thing about fear is it's actually about something that's not right there necessarily right now.
Yeah.
It's what might be there, you know.
Yeah.
It's this,
Yeah.
this whole concept of the unknown.
Yeah.
So for me, when you share your story, for you to have comfort in one of the most harshest locations in the planet is actually quite extraordinary. For someone who says, yes, I am a fearful person, I was a fearful person for most of my early adult life in particular, you know, that fears were there around things, you know, to sit comfortably you bought a rooftop tent so you didn't have snakes, yet you're sitting in the middle of a location where probably, if you think about it, at least 4 of the top 5 most venomous snakes in the planet actually live, you know.
I didn't think I wasn't going to go there.
It actually speaks volumes for me, for how you must not have, you know, that self-prioritization, if the Dalai Lama is correct, of things, must not have been the case for you, because otherwise perhaps fear would have come in, survival-based fear would have come in, or something like that. You know, I don't know. Like, you don't seem to have struck me that you were worried about your survival.
No,
it was just a case of while I'm here.
That hadn't come out, and you know, to be honest, that connection with the heart, the feeling center, it's like beyond survival, and it brings you into the present moment of what is then, and that present moment is I was okay.
Yeah.
I was actually okay, so there wasn't any reason to go anywhere else. Like, I wasn't in pain, and I was actually okay in that present moment. So, and I had heard and read a lot about, you know, being present in what is at the time and how helpful that is. And, you know, had some...
Have you found that, you know, you said, you know, that sort of concept of being a fear-based person, and to be honest, for me, like, fear has been, I guess my relationship with fear has been unusual, because it's not been a major theme for me in how I guess for me as a person, you know, I mean, Rani would say that I've got balls of steel, because I take risks and I do things that that maybe she or other people would not, right? But I've never, because I maybe have a high risk tolerance for things, they have not, I haven't had the fear, therefore I've not felt that was an appropriate comment, because there was no, I felt someone who that comment would be appropriate to has courage, and courage for me is to find that you feel the fear and you do it, right? So I don't actually feel the fear in the first place. But I do feel fear when it comes to other people around me, you know, so my son or Rani in particular, you know, that fear for me would creep in the context around them. And so for me, my experience of using the heart with fear is more about trusting, you know, if something's feeling good, you know, or if fear is emerging, that I allow my heart to help me feel joyful and hear, and that freedom that the heart brings, for me, and I can even feel as I'm saying it now, would normally allow whatever, you know, fear might be creeping in on the sides to start to just diminish, you know. But I don't have that day-to-day experience of that coming up. Is that something that, you know, through life, you know, you're sure about the heart has helped you? Are there things that come up where you can feel that fear creeping in on the side, and you have to sort of go, you know, I need to let my heart do something here, and, you know.
Well, what I've noticed by staying longer and longer within the heart space, without sort of having to address something head on, or being aware of it, the fear within me has been melting away slowly. And there's still things that that I'm scared of. Like I really don't like heights. So I'll still have to go, okay, have to stay really in the heart to go with that high
So
thing.
what would happen? So you'd be, if you were put in a situation where you were heading up a height, or you suddenly realise, oh my
Melbourne
gosh.
Bridge is one of them.
Yeah, so driving over the bridge.
Yeah, I have to go far to hit mine. Didn't actually need to go
You're in a
away
nice
to
safety
Darwin.
railing, yeah.
I could just go up and up over the bridge. But yeah.
And so what happens? What do you do? You talked about how you need to stay in that heart space. How would you allow that to happen, or enable that to happen?
Well, I have smiling helps. Singing helps.
Yep.
For me, with fear. But the ultimate, because I know I'm not really on the edge. I really know that's illusionary. I don't really have much control over it, so I just do the best to get through it. But I know I'm also not really on the edge of fear. But also in fearful situations, like I know, when I was out there in the Catherine Gorge, one thing that really gave me a lot of strength was I was fortunate to be at a friend's birth. He had a natural home birth, and just seeing how someone can just drop deeper and deeper and deeper into surrender what is and allow that opening. For me, that's my understanding of courage and really being in a heart space to overcome.
Yeah.
And that was
because we talk about this concept of attachments, right? How we can become attached to something. We can become attached to a negative feeling. We can become attached to a desire, to something, or harbouring a grudge, and we can also, for me, an attachment is actually that we're holding onto something that may or may not really serve us very well, So you mentioned something when we were talking about your experience in the desert the other day, about this awareness you had of holding fear versus actually deciding to not hold it. And to let it flow away, right? And letting the heart help in that sort of, this might sound really ridiculous to some people, but maybe you want to talk about that a little bit and how that happened.
Well, because I had quite a few hours actually on my own in the bush.
Yeah.
And
about 10. Yeah,
about 10. So I actually had that space and time, which a lot of us don't actually get.
Yeah.
Of being in a space of choosing to be in the present moment, and there was a lot of insights from being in that space. And one of the insights was that how I'd been around fear was that I'd felt with fear it freezes you, and I would hold on. I'd grasp fear when it came and try and suppress it and hold on to it, which of course then I'm frozen up with fear. And what I realised was that just let go. It's showing you something to become alert and aware and let it flow through the system. Don't hold on to it. So with any traumas that we might have had in childhood or something, what I realised was that we hold on to it and we freeze it in the moment and we keep it in a cellular way, still in our psyche or in our physical. And, just that opportunity to learn to just let it flow through. And actually, then it can be energizing. So I have a different understanding, a different relationship with fear now after that experience.
And what happened? How did your heart sort of help in that?
It's interesting with the heart, because where I notice with the brain you're not out of problem, with the heart it comes through like a deeper part, like a wisdom that's known, like an unveiling of something that you go, oh yeah, I know that, and I know that through, I know that very deeply.
Sure.
Where the brain, when I've netted out a problem, it's grasped it and then I have to achieve it. It's all mind-based. but the heart doesn't feel like that.
No, I mean that's actually, you know, I guess a lot of people, you know, you read these books like Feel a Fear and Do It Anyway, and all these sort of self-development books that are very mind-based, and we, you know, we talk about in the Bridging the Heart and Mind programs that we teach, that, you know, that there's a real difference. There's an alternative way to, I guess, go down the self-development, self-improvement
Yeah.
journey, where you allow your heart to get involved and to help you. Right? So, in the mind-based way, you know, you can use all logic, you know,
Yeah.
you like,
And
you
you're
can,
still scared.
and you still have fear, right?
Yeah.
Or you can decide that you do all the positive affirmations and the neuro-linguistic programming techniques that you want, you know. And I used to, you know, back in the 80s as an athlete in the early 90s, you know, you do this stuff, you know, so that you would perform well. And for me, actually, there was one massive fear that I always used to have, and that was talking in public, doing this, you know. You know, my throat would tighten, my stomach would be in knots, and the greatest fear of my life was talking in front of people, which is crazy. You know, I get on stages in front of 1,000 people, and you know, I do this sort of stuff now, and it would not be possible, but for the fact that I've learned to connect with my heart and to speak from a deeper place, so that I have confidence that an authentic message will come out. You know, it doesn't need to be scripted. It doesn't need to be controlled and managed. And accordingly, I have this beautiful freedom of, you know, it's an enthusiastic, not excitement, but just real interest. I don't even know what's going to come out in these episodes, you know. It just and to the point that, you know,
makes it more interesting.
Steve or I will just sort of say normally, look, it feels like we should finish now, you know. Yeah, it does, you know, and then we just stop, you know. And but that's sort of the way it is, and it's really a really different relationship that I've found because of that connection with the heart, that just enables something. You know, it's a different experience of life. That freedom. You know, the episode title today was, you know, sort of how your heart helps you remove fear and be free.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm interested in your thoughts on that. Like that freedom, fear versus freedom. Is that actually a good alternative? You know, and a realistic opposite to fear?
Yeah, well, I don't know. What set me on this journey was, even as a young person, I wanted freedom. And so I'd bandied around, you know, I want freedom, I want to be free. And what I realised as I've gone, you know, through life, freedom actually is love. That it's actually through, and that's the feeling through the heart space is love, and that's the real key for me that sets me free, and is setting me free. You know, it's a continuous journey, because there's lots of me that I don't feel that yet, but the parts that do, such a relief.
Yeah.
Such a relief, and I even feel to the point now that I can, you know, I can meet old age, I can meet death, I can meet, you know, the big things in life that we all have to meet.
Yeah.
I know that I don't have to meet them perfectly, but I know I can connect in here.
Yeah.
I can come to that place of, you know, one could call it freedom. Yeah, I personally call it love, because it has the sweetest feeling that I've ever felt, and that's the only word I could give it, really.
Is it actually something that, you know, and this is an interesting concept, you know, I guess I look at a lot of people as they get older, and me included, you know, this sort of comfort zone creeps in, you know, the pattern of adventurous behaviour diminishes a little bit, you know. And you talk about love as the feeling from your heart, and accordingly it's what overcomes fear. So my question on this topic really is, do things that provide, or that would have once made you fearful,
Mm.
are they actually sort of really great opportunities for you to allow your heart to step in, and so you feel that love perhaps more, or do you just feel it all the time in your heart?
I don't know. Life's interesting. Like,
So they're
I feel like
facilities,
everyone
you know?
would have different ways.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think there's one way.
Mm.
You know, I don't feel like we have to keep putting ourselves on the edge to experience love, but we're all different, and I feel like love's dynamic, and it's strong and powerful, and it's sweet and gentle, and it's light and safe.
Mm.
You know, so it's so dynamic. You can't.
And so it's
You
there
can't
in
box
it's there
it.
it's there when you're grateful. It's there when you're fearful. It's there.
Yeah, it's there anyway. I just noticed with my character that I just noticed that without knowing, I had got, I don't know, I always think of the Pink Floyd lyric, "Comfortably Numb." See, I feel like I have to, there's a space where I can delude myself. You know, how to be in life fully, experience it and enjoy it
Yeah.
fully without being, if I get, you know, you want to be comfortable, of course, because that's lovely, but I don't want the comfortable to stop me feeling alive and in love with life,
Yeah.
with what's given.
And I guess, you know, that concept really, that fear, it imposes limits, doesn't it? You know, it sort of
Can do.
it you know, people, you know, there's fight or flight.
Yeah.
But people that I've noticed, and me, say public speaking when I was younger, I would resist the chance to do it.
Yeah.
You know, at times, I'd squirm out of it. You know.
Yeah.
And other occasions when I'd take the fight option, and I'd willingly enter the arena of public speaking, so that I would push myself through the pain barrier on this belief that you know, that if I step outside my comfort zone and I don't die, then guess what's happened? Comfort zone is stretched.
Yeah.
You know, but what I found with public
Yeah.
speaking was it still would push my buttons the next time around. You know,
Yeah.
like, and I guess I became very proficient at it, and I learned lots of techniques, and I did train the trainer, and I became a speaker and all this stuff. But actually, you know what? It wasn't until for me that I learned about how to let my heart help me, and that really that the fear would disappear, and I would just speak, you know, and just get up on a stage in front of a lot of people, and just be there and connect with myself, my heart, and the audience. It's really different. You know.
Because we have a lot of strategies, don't we, to help ourselves overcome our fears, to get on with what we feel we should do, or what we need. And
absolutely. And
and the heart's beyond that. Heart's beyond it, which is so good.
No. So,
It's beyond our strategies.
It's incredible, you know. If I sit back and sort of think about, you know, what you have been talking about, Amanda, and thank you so much for coming on the show. It's actually getting hot, and I sort of feel like we're getting to the end of the episode. Do you feel that?
Yes, it's hotter than Darwin, I think.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but look, you know, for those of you watching, if we had to wrap this up, I'm interested to get your take on this, Amanda. But what would be the things that you would recommend to people about how they could allow their heart to help them to deal with fear?
Well, I think trusting is a key issue. And we don't, it's
Trusting
no point,
what?
that's right, it's no point just saying trusting, like trusting here your grandma, you know, like, but you need to spend time here to come to that place where you
strengthening your heart.
So smiling. For me, you know, I'll often would have just popped my hand here, and I see it all the time when people say, "Oh, what a beautiful baby," or "I love that so much." They actually automatically speak from here, and so I would actually spend that time
We actually talked about this in a couple of the previous episodes, and Steve, for those of you that haven't seen the episodes, I think episodes 2 and 3, if you go to Two Guys Talk Heart, the number 2, Two Guys Talk Heart on Facebook, you can check out the previous episodes. And when you're there, in fact, of course, you've just got to like it, don't you? I mean, this is great stuff, really. But the good thing about liking the show is that you'll also you'll get access to the show when it's live, so it'll pop up on your newsfeed on Facebook. Doesn't mean you have to watch it live. If you do, great. Like it, feed in comments, and we can feed back to you. We'd love to get your suggestions on the show on different topics, actually, as well.
Oh, that would be
and
such
how
fun.
has fear showed up for you in your life, and how have you dealt with it? How have you overcome it? How have you allowed your heart to help you? We'd love to interact with you on those topics, or any other topic that you reckon we should talk about on the show. It's funny because Amanda's on the show today. I had figured to get Amanda on the show about an utterly different topic, which we can talk about some other time. But on the topic of fear, this guidance, and Steve's guidance about how you can do a basic technique to help you strengthen your heart, episodes 2 and 3.
That's great.
The takeaway for me on this,
saved me.
That sort of concept of, for me, of learning techniques and learning how my heart could actually really become the director of my life a bit, and really, so that wasn't my brain and having this performance-based sort of mindset or paradigm, but actually having my heart be so strong that I could feel that love, if you like, that joy, that peace, that calmness. I could feel this peaceful, calm feeling that would just come from my heart. And so even as I was, getting the count in to run up onto a stage, there was this knowledge, as you said earlier, that it's great, it's fine, this is beautiful, this is wonderful, and you just, and I get up there and something would happen, but that's been the journey for me, that there's this, is it confidence, is it trust?
It's funny, but even when you like you said before, when you start talking about the heart, I start relaxing. I just automatically start relaxing. You can feel a nice feeling starting to, I don't know,
and you just know, right? You just know it's,
nice.
Even if
so good.
the things that are going to push your buttons, that have been in the past for me, ground me to a stop. Just don't. The heart just, they're not even relevant anymore. It just changes the whole paradigm.
Sometimes I wonder, that when we have these difficult things, and I wonder if they're there just to help us.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I was saying before. Are they sort of like facilities or opportunities? I don't know.
I don't know. They really help me. They help me come there. But I don't think they're necessary. You could be there all the time. Yeah. I don't know. But
well, maybe for all of you watching at home, you can feed into this topic. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Stuart Hayes. I'm normally accompanied by the beautiful, wonderful, heart-centered, smiley, charismatic Steve Ray. And today, all of those words, Amanda Young. Thanks, Amanda, for joining us on the show. It's been a really amazing story. And I hope it's been useful for you all at home. And we look forward to seeing you again a week from now. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks,
Jamie, our producer.
Wonderful day.
You're welcome. Good to see you too.